Hey, Ohio, welcome once again to the Retirement Blueprint Show with Tim Lofton of Axum Planning and Wealth. I'm your host, Spike Spangle. Mr. Tim Lofton, what's on your mind this week?
Well, I want to talk a little bit about business owners selling businesses, classifying those in their mind for retirement, and kind of what kind of dollars are trading hands in the United States today for business owners.
Great place to start off. We're also going to talk a little bit about the IRS recruiting an army, and then some myths about retirement, investing, taxes, all that and more, all wrapped up in today's program. So don't go anywhere. What I want to remind you of right now is that you can get started on your own retirement blueprint for no cost to you. We'll put up the phone number, we'll put up our QR code. You can use these to get started on your own retirement blueprint. This will include your investments, taxes, estate planning, Social Security concerns, how and when to take your Medicare, which parts of the A, B, C, and D's of all of that.
The alphabet soup.
The alphabet soup. You can talk about all of that with Tim Lofton here of Axum Planning and Wealth. That's what the Retirement Blueprint Show is all about. Let's start with these business owners, though. I really like this because I am concerned that a lot of folks build their business and that alone is their retirement plan.
I think that's a very common thing. As you know, we've sat down with, I don't want to say hundreds, but a lot of business owners over the last 30 years. And it's very common as the business owner makes money, they put the money back into the business, they grow the business, they do an amazing job. And when we ask them about retirement, they kind of say, it's kind of my business. My business is my retirement. I'm growing it. I'm going to sell it someday. I'm going to get a check. I'll invest the check with you, Tim, and then you can figure it out from there. I mean, that's kind of the way that they're wired. I don't mind the business being part of the retirement picture. I just worry about it being the only retirement picture.
Yeah, and then we can also think about people who are great, wonderful contractors or independent owners, real estate agents, even doctors, nurses sometimes who travel. There's all different kinds of iterations of this. Where they don't have a permanent retirement plan. They don't have somebody every 2 weeks, including ourselves, putting money into a 401k, maybe getting a match from their employer. They're betting it all on themselves. And that's got to be a very scary position to be in, especially as we start to get into our 50s. Like, wow, how am I ever going to retire?
Well, and I think that is, one of the hurdles is, you own a business, you run the business, there's so much going on, you're tour in all these different directions. And there's not that corporation you work for that says, here's the 401k, put money in it, they pull it out of your check, it's really easy. That business owner actually has to take that step. And it could be an independent contractor. We have a lot of doctors as clients that have set up their own retirement plan. Nobody's done it for them. There's not a company they work for, but here's the advantage there. You can put away so much money pre-tax from your business, which brings up the whole other piece of this of, I don't want to show a lot of income, I don't want to pay a lot of taxes, and that can be very short-sighted. It impacts your Social Security. If I'm not showing much income, I'm not going to get much Social Security. That's a lifetime of income that I'm not paying into. And I get the argument, right? It's like, why am I going to pay all these taxes to get this Social Security? One of the tools that we can use to show more income, not pay taxes on it, is a retirement plan. Setting up your personal 401k, a SEP, a self-employed pension plan. There's options out there that the IRS has been very liberal with how much money you can put in, and I think it's a great idea to investigate.
Yeah, I don't have the actual data in front of me, but it's something like in a SEP IRA, you can put up to $66,000, and then if your spouse also happens to work, they can as well. I mean, we're talking being able to catch up on your retirement very quickly. Now, I also want to say this. We are not giving this advice so that we need to sit down and figure out what your business is.
For sure.
Because this is really complex tax planning as well. This isn't just investing in your business and future. This is complex tax strategy.
This is not something you want to do on your own, Spike. This is something that you want to say, all right, I get it. Tim, your team, figure this out. Here's what we make. Here's what our business is. What would you recommend? Because this is very personalized advice. It's very custom. And we want to make sure we're having those conversations with people. They're not just taking something off of our TV show and trying to implement it on their own.
Right. Now, let me also ask you this. How do you properly value someone else's business? I mean, you're not.
We don't.
You don't. Okay.
We don't, but we have a partner that does. So we're talking about what's called an M&A firm. It's a fancy initials for mergers and acquisitions. Now, when I say that, I think back to the movies and some guy in a corner office in New York City and he's trying to raid a company. That's not what we're talking about here. A good M&A firm is designed around creating a valuation for your business. They know the marketplace, they know the business that you're in, and then they're looking for a buyer out there who's willing to pay the most money for that business, usually not in the same state. One of the mistakes that we've seen with a lot of business owners, they're selling the business local. Now, I understand that if somebody's coming into my business to buy it, they're going to be local, but they don't have to be coming from Ohio to do it. And if you look across at, the coasts, the Californias and the New Yorks, there's companies that are willing to pay a much higher multiple for a business than maybe what a local person might pay in Ohio. And here's the thing, you get to make the choice. You don't have to decide whether or not you're going to sell to that person, but it's nice to know that that valuation is there and that you have the opportunity. Listen, $1.6 trillion last year changed hands from people selling businesses. That kind of money means serious planning, serious intentionality, and making sure that you're getting the most that you can get. I mean, you've poured your life into building this business.
All right. Well, on the flip side of that, we've poured our lives into building this business. What if we're hoping that business continues to be not only my retirement plan, but then my wealth transfer plan to my kids, that I want to keep this going, or maybe just even for my spouse, at least for them. How do you do that from the beyond?
And don't forget about taxes.
Yeah.
A big sales tag means big taxes. And there's a lot of different ways that you can go about selling a business to keep more of those dollars yourself versus sending them to the IRS, who apparently is going to charge more money on their credit card and rack up our national debt.
Speaking
not being political here.
Right. So we're going to talk about the retirement blueprint as we go out to, no politics. Don't get me in trouble over here. The FCC calls me, they don't call you. You go back to the office. I get in trouble for it. No, we're not talking politics. We're not talking red or blue because your money is green. That's what we help you focus on. We keep you focused on you, your family, your goals, and your aspirations. But we are going to talk about the government building an army. The only weapon that they are putting in their hands, though, is a calculator. So what army are we talking about building when we get back after this? But folks, you can get started on your own retirement blueprint right now. You're watching the show. I know your phone is in your lap. Pick up that, go to the phone function, use it like an actual phone, and dial this phone number right now. Get started on your own retirement blueprint. There's no cost. You'll come into the office, you'll meet with Tim, and we'll find out how we can build an income plan for you. More with Tim Lofton and the IRS Army when we get back right after this.
One of the things that we're seeing in the office today is people are coming in with statements that are down 15, 20, 30%, and they're still needing that same income withdrawal, which means the percentage they're taking out from their portfolio is now higher, which increases that risk of running out of money in retirement. This is where planning for volatility really comes into play, and it's the biggest shift that we're making for new people coming in our office, trying to help them recover what they've lost, but also make sure that they don't run into that same situation down the road. When you're looking at retirement planning versus pre-retirement planning, that's the difference. One is about accumulation. It's about growing your money over time. Once you get to retirement, it's about distribution, which is a different strategy. At our office, what we focus on is giving jobs to the money. It's making sure that the dollars that we need to produce income have that volatility removed. That allows us to take risk in other areas because we have our income figured out. If volatility has been an issue, if you're looking at your statement right now and it's down 15, 20, 30%, do you know how you're going to get back? Do you know what you're going to do in the future if that happens again? If you don't, sit down with us for a complimentary review. Let us design a retirement blueprint to help you retire and, more importantly, stay retired.
Welcome back to the Retirement Blueprint Show with Tim Lofton of Axon Planning and Wealth. I'm your host, Spike Spangle. We're talking about retirement solutions today. Although I'm not a big fan of this solution that's going on right now. The government
Well, it's
is,
not our solution.
yeah, they're creating another army right now,
Yeah.
arming them only with calculators. What army are we talking about here?
The IRS army. So listen, this
I
is
can't wait to see the uniform.
this is really interesting. They're actually paying hiring bonuses now, trying to attract talent from accounting firms to come over with people that are already experienced to come after your money.
You know what? I showed you this Venn diagram. We did a radio show here on WHIO here on the weekends, along with the TV show. The Venn diagram is that, look, American individuals, we pay 52% of the tax budget that goes to the government. And we've got corporations, and you've got everything literally from lottery taxes, all these different things. We're already paying over 50% of it. What are they looking for more IRS agents to what, squeeze more out of us?
Absolutely. That's exactly what they're doing.
Sorry.
I mean, I don't know how else to tell you. I mean, stay tuned. Don't turn the channel. Listen, they're coming after people that make a lot of money because that's where the revenue is. And they are desperate for revenue. The IRS is trying to figure this out. Social Security is a disaster. We have a national deficit that is out of control. We have spending that is not going down. And even though taxes are increasing, they're getting more revenue, they're just spending it, Spike. They have to figure out a way to get more revenue, and that means they're going to be looking through the tax microscope.
If they're going after the
at us.
high-income earners, I can think of two off the top of my head that make a lot more than any of us.
Right.
Why are they going after? And when you
Do
say
you know
make
how
a lot of
expensive
money,
rocket ships are? I mean, you can't just be flying up into space for free. Those guys are spending that money, right?
yeah. And when you say they're going after folks with a lot of money, because I think we've heard this in some of this election cycle as well. What do you think a lot of money is to this new IRS army? Is this the over 400,000, or are they going to be looking below that as well?
Well, I think to be determined. Listen, if it was me and I was the IRS, I'm going to start at the top and work my way down. I mean, because the people at the top are going to give me the biggest bang for the buck if I can find something there that maybe they missed. Or listen, I don't think this is about people that are cheating the system. I think this is more about somebody who maybe misinterpreted the system. You know, they wrote off this and they really weren't allowed to write off that. Not that it was done intentionally, but it was done. The IRS missed it. Now they're bringing this army behind to kind of put a second set of eyes. Most of what's being done at the IRS is done through a computer. I mean, it's not, you know, we send in this data and we think that there's these people just pouring over our tax returns, and that's not really what's happening. They pour over our tax returns when they do an audit, when they actually come out and they're looking at it. The computer's giving them that list. So don't be on that list. But if you
Yeah,
are,
but how do you not be
how
on
do
that? I mean, I know we're trying to go to our CPA. I mean, this is what makes me nervous about using the online tools. And I'm not saying that you can't. Maybe you do have a pretty simplified return, but if you are one of those medium-sized business owners that we were talking about, or if you have different write-offs, or if you're using properties for depreciation, I mean, if your tax situation gets more and more complicated, that's where I'm saying you need to be working with somebody who can kind of look this over. But with more and more people being hired into the IRS, for us regular folk, what about for retirees? I mean, there's a lot that goes into the provisional income. You think they're going to be going after the elder generation that has a lot sitting in that 401k?
Not directly, but potentially indirectly. You know, we have seen a lot of talk about, you know, the cost of 401k savings. When you look at, you know, what the government is actually missing out on in tax revenue by allowing us to save on a monthly basis into our 401ks and IRAs and retirement plans, it's a pretty big number. So, you know, is there a time in the future where, you know, maybe there's some taxation involved there? We don't know. But if that is a possibility, if there is a chance that, you know, those 401ks could become out of style, out of favor, that's going to usher back in potentially pension plans in the corporate America.
Well, that could be interesting, though. But will corporate America go ahead and pay for it? I know there are some organizations that do have the billions in corporate profits, record-breaking profits over the last couple of years, 2022 and 2023. Would they be willing to throw that in? You know what? A trade-off. Pay another 5 or 10% in corporate taxes, or start a pension plan so we can make sure America retires. Either way, I would love for somebody to be able to look them in the face and go, we need to make sure that America retires. Now, we've been trying to save on our own for 4 decades, and that's what worries me.
Well, I think, the benefit to a company going back to the pension route is keeping their good employees, right? I mean, that's the one thing that the pension generation saw was people were at a company for 30 plus years. They didn't go anywhere. Why didn't they go anywhere? Because their lifetime income after they were retired was tied to that company. When you look at pensions, they go like this. Starts out, there's almost no benefit, and then all of a sudden at 30 years, you get this huge benefit. That's what keeps people around. That's what makes people sticky when it comes to corporate America. They're no longer saying, I can make $10,000 if I go over to this company, and there's no downside to me not to do that. It's either my company pays me $10,000 more, or I'm going to leave. What am I giving up? I get to take my 401k with me. It's transportable. I have no pension tying me there. I'm going to get health care at the new company I go to. Why wouldn't I leave? A pension would definitely curb that. Now, there's a cost to it, as you pointed out. Is corporate America going to go for that? I don't know. I mean, that is to be determined.
But if I'm running for office, I'd say, look, I give corporations a 100% tax break on anything that they put in to start a pension plan for their employees. Or at least, I don't know, 50%, 75%, anything. We need to try to find a motivation to get more of them to do it. We reported a story on the radio program. There's a large organization, and I know we can say it because they have implemented it, starting it for 2025, IBM. And they were one of the forerunners on starting 401ks.
Right.
And they flipped the script. It's not exactly called a pension, but it's something like that. They're going to be funding it, and then I think it's going to have to do with a certain amount of duration. So you want to talk about vesting. We talk about vesting with a 401k. We need to work at a company for 1 year to get 50% of our money, 2 years to get 75, 3 years to get 100%. A vesting schedule on a pension might be, you got to work for us for 10 years or you're not getting any of it, right? So you almost have to pick your career wisely.
And remember, we talk about the cost for a company to transition to a pension. It's not like the 401k is free, right? They're paying, fees for the 401k. They have matching. Sometimes there's profit sharing. There's a lot of money that's already being allocated from profits in corporate America for 401k. So it's not as though they're going to go from paying nothing to all of a sudden this big bill for retirees. And there's the implementation of it. How do we transition? We saw the inverse of this when pensions went away as we moved into a 401k generation. How do you take somebody that's only 3 years away from retirement? It would be a very complicated process, but there's definitely some value in it, I think, evaluating it.
Well, I think there would obviously be some grandfathering and some grandmothering there.
For sure, and that's what happened with pensions.
Yeah, and it's actually still happening with governments as well. The pensions are there, but there are some hybrids coming along where now if you're a younger person coming in, you have to contribute more. There's less of the guaranteed pension. But here's the thing, it's all very complicated. If you want to make sure that you've got an income plan that works for you, if you don't have a pension, if you'd like to figure out how to take your own savings and turn that into your own pension that you can't run out of in retirement, you've probably never done that before, but you can right here. Call the phone number down here on the bottom of the screen. Come on in and meet with Tim Lofton. Get started on your own retirement blueprint. Income, investments, taxes, costs, risks, estate planning, how and when to take your Social Security, your health care choices, long-term care choices. That's the complete retirement blueprint, and we can do that for you by you just calling the phone number. You need to take action. We'll be back with more with Tim Lofton in the Retirement Blueprint Show right after this.
The mistake that we see with a lot of people coming into our office is that they made a projection of how much money they were going to need maybe 20 years ago, and they didn't account for inflation in those figures. The average retiree is going to spend at least 20 years in retirement. That means that the cost of living is going to double at least one time. For example, if somebody 20 years ago said, I'm going to need $40,000 for my investments in retirement, that number is only worth $20,000 now. And so they actually needed to make sure they were looking for $80,000 if $40,000 net was their number back then. So as we're looking at the income needed in retirement, we have to have a plan in place that's going to double our income over that same period, or we're going to have to reduce our lifestyle, which is not what we worked all our lives for. Those are the types of things that we try and help clients with as they're planning out their future retirement to make sure that taxes and inflation are covered in those projections. If taxes and inflation are keeping you up at night, give us a call. Sit down, let us do a complimentary review with you and design your very own retirement blueprint. It's our trademark process that we've designed over the last 30 years to help you retire and stay retired.
Welcome back to the Retirement Blueprint Show with Tim Lofton of Axon Planning and Wealth. I'm Spike Spangle, and now we're going to talk about retirement investing myths and worries. So look, we've mentioned a lot how some folks are behind this 401k generation that might not have saved enough. So Tim, is this the time to step on the pedal, take more risk, and try to maximize the returns on those accounts?
I think there's a lot of temptation to take more risk, and people feel behind, right? I mean, we just talked about earlier in the show that the average savings right now for retirement is around $200,000, and you said, well, that's not enough. Well, that's because it's not enough. The way to fix that, the way to look at this is not about maximizing the risk that you're taking, but to maximize your future income. It's making sure, what is my income goal? The income goal will tell you how much you need to have saved. That's really where we need people to start thinking, not let's roll the dice, take more risk, and if we hit that home run, all of a sudden, we're going to arrive, because what if you don't? What if it goes the other way on you? That happens every day. Market volatility is in the news. It is online. It is on your 401k statement.
Yeah, and so if we're taking a look at our 401ks or whatever our investments are, we're in our 50s, maybe early 60s. This isn't necessarily, and again, we have to sit down with you and find out exactly, but this isn't the time to necessarily maximize the risk, but this is the time to maximize the savings. Right. And if you've maxed out that 401k, what about on the outside? Are we looking at other vehicles on the outside?
I want to save my way to retirement. I don't want to try and get there. I mean, this is the equivalency, when you take a whole bunch of risk, is the equivalency of driving down the highway at 100 miles an hour and throwing your radar detector at a cop and then being shocked when you get pulled over and taken to jail, right? We don't want people to end up in retirement jail. That means I have to keep working, I don't have enough money, and I don't have enough income, and it's avoidable. A lot of times as we're talking about the 401k generation, there's a jealousy of, man, my grandparents had it so easy. They get a pension and they get that lifetime income. And that's true. And I don't disagree with the easiness of it, but I don't want to miss out on the fact that, listen, the 401k generation has more money. The people who have done it right, for those out there that have saved, you actually have more money. And you have more money to pass on someday. Can't pass on a pension. When your parents passed away, your grandparents passed away, the pension stopped. Your 401k assets, you still have those. They pass on to your spouse. They can pass on to your kids. So, I understand the attractiveness of a pension, and we've been talking about that on the show. I like both of them. But I don't want people to be so jealous of the pension that they lose sight of the opportunity that they have themselves to save in their 401k plans.
It is a really dynamic way to think about it. And my light bulb just went on listening to you there as well. Yeah, if you had a pension and you turn on your Social Security, you have what you were given there. Maybe you had some other savings. Hopefully the house was paid off. That was the generation in the 50s and the 60s. But that was it. And then when you passed away, you weren't passing anything on. That pension was gone. That Social Security stops. The amount of growth in the United States since 1980, when people started saving into 401ks, I mean, I almost want to say it's grown like 4,000%. It's because back in the 50s and 60s, most regular Americans weren't calling a stockbroker and saying, I want this new individual stock of this Coca-Cola company or something. Now, if you had, oh my gosh, that would have been incredible. But we had started saving into things, and we're part of the growth of everything that's happened in the Dow Jones and the S&P 500. So, I mean, your money has possibly doubled or tripled, and if you don't spend through it all or you do proper planning, you'll be able to pass this on to spouse or heirs. That's the difference.
We talked about the assets, $156 trillion of assets. Those assets did not come from pension money, right? Those assets came from people saving. And so when we talk about the transfer of wealth, we've talked about that peak 65 with the number of people turning 65, and the wealth that's going to be transferring is transferring because of the 401k generation. That wealth was created and saved and now can be passed on. And that is a big difference from the generation that you were talking about. Listen, nobody bought stocks and bonds for the normal American back then. There were no mutual funds. It was literally, I worked at a company, that's where my money was going to come from. I needed all of the rest of it to pay my bills, to provide for my family. There was no extra to save. This has been something over the last 20 or 30 years that has come to be. And it is completely different than what we saw just 30 years ago.
Right, and we just want to help our folks out there look at this through a different lens. That yes, we do have to save on our own. Yes, it can be difficult and complicated, but you don't have to do it by yourself. You can call the phone number you see down here on the bottom of the screen. Tim, we got about a minute left. I'm going to let you take it home. Tell the folks exactly what the Retirement Blueprint is going to be like when they come in.
The Retirement Blueprint is a written financial plan. It's designed and custom made for each individual that comes into our office. This isn't something that we mail out to you. It's not a book or a brochure. It's an actual written plan that looks at designing an income plan, investment strategy, long-term care plan, Social Security claiming strategy, making sure that you have everything protected through your estate plan and looking at it through a tax microscope.
Right. And you're going to be in there and you're going to introduce people to the team around the office. Thank you so much, Tim Lofton. It's been the Retirement Blueprint Show, and I can't say it enough. Now is your time to act. Interest rates have been changing. Yes, we have had a very good stock market at the beginning of this year. Who knows where it's going to be by the time the election cycle runs through. So call right now to get your own Retirement Blueprint. That phone number down on the bottom of the screen. Or you can open up your phone to the camera function, point at the QR code. You can schedule your own appointment there. No cost. Thank you so much for watching. We'll be back again